The Senate is headed for a showdown over Democrats' sweeping voting rights and elections bill. Today, lawmakers on the Rules Committee will hold a markup on the For the People Act to give members a chance to propose changes to the controversial legislation. Republicans fiercely oppose it, calling the bill a federal overreach.
Let's bring in Democratic Congressman Colin Allred of Texas to talk more about this and other things. So you were kind enough to join us not too long ago, and we did get a chance to talk about something that is kind of a passion of yours. So I want to start with that first before we get to the voting rights bill. I want to talk about paternity leave. You are said to be the first and only male Congress member to take paternity leave back in 2019, and now you're pushing for national paid family leave program. You know, the other day I was doing some reading about the slowing birth rate in this country and concerns about the population growth, and there are many reasons, but one of the reasons cited by young women is that there isn't enough support, and they are concerned about the lack of paid leave, and what would they do? How would they care for a child? So I think it's a really important issue to talk about. I want to hear from you, though, why you think it's important, and do you see it, getting bipartisan support?
Well, thank you for talking about this. I think it's something we don't talk about enough, even though all of us at some point in our lives will have something happen in our family where we're going to need some time off work, whether that's having a new child like my wife and I did. And I didn't know that I was the first member of Congress to take paternity leave. Maybe others did, but didn't say they did. But I've done it twice now. And I did it in part to dramatize and to talk about how important it is for men to take leave as well. Because we often talk about this in the context of its impact on women, and we should, because it does disproportionately impact women. But the research is very clear that when men take leave, there are better results for the child, better results in the home. The wife often makes more money and is more able to pursue their career. And so it's something that everyone should have access to, and something that I hope we can get done on a bipartisan basis, because polling tells us it's extremely popular.
Is the $225 billion laid out for national paid family and medical leave programs in the President's American Families Plan enough to address this issue?
Well, we'll have to see. And I think that when we look at the President's plan, we have to understand that it's an opening offer subject to negotiation. He has said in his address to Congress and many times that he wants this to be bipartisan. He wants to have buy-in from both parties. And of course, we need to make sure that whatever we do actually does meet the needs that we're trying to fulfill. And the idea here is to give everyone access to paid family leave. 95% of low-wage workers don't have access to it. Oftentimes in professional spaces, whether it's attorneys or accountants, that's already offered because it's a benefit that you have to offer in order to keep your employees and to not lose them to someone else. But when we talk about folks who are working on an hourly basis, who are working towards the bottom end of the spectrum, this is not offered at all. And what we see is people coming into work when they're sick, which of course in COVID we realize we don't want. People not being able to take care of a family member, folks having a child and being back at work a week later. That's something that we don't want to see in this country. We're the only major developed country that doesn't have some paid family leave system. So we need to find a way to get this done.
So let's talk about what's happening today. The Senate will hold a markup shortly on the controversial voting bill called the For the People Act. It comes as several GOP-led states are advancing their own voting restrictions that President Biden and other Democrats have compared to Jim Crow-era laws. How significant is it for Congress to pass a bill like this one?
Well, I want to take a little issue with the use of the word controversial there. I was a voting rights lawyer, and I can tell you that everything that's in the H.R. 1, as we called it, the For the People Act, is really critical for our democracy. And if it's controversial, it's because there are folks who have either given up on our democracy or who disagree that we should be expanding and protecting the right to vote. We're seeing that here in Texas, certainly, where our state legislature right now is working on very creative ways to add to the already extremely restrictive laws that we have in place. And this is a real crisis for our democracy. And I'm someone who I don't have engaged in a lot of hyperbole, but I can tell you this is the worst spat of laws that we've seen coming forward to try and restrict the right to vote since the Jim Crow era. And so we have to have a federal response, because if we don't, what we're going to see is that we're going to have dramatically different aspects of our democracy in different states. In some states, you'll be able to vote pretty freely, have access to vote by mail, and others You see every restriction possible put in place. And that patchwork system is one that we used to have in this country, in which some states didn't even allow African Americans like me to vote. And we moved away from that. We passed the Voting Rights Act. We've made so much progress. We can't go backwards.
So Republicans unanimously oppose this bill. They argue it amounts to a federal takeover of state-run elections. How do you respond to that?
Well, we need to have national standards around what's acceptable and what should be available to all Americans. So what are we talking about in this bill? It's setting national standards for access to vote by mail, national standards for early voting, setting standards around voter registration so that our democracy isn't radically different from state to state. Within that and within those national standards, the states will still have the ability to administer the elections the way they always have. But this is also one of the arguments that we heard during the Jim Crow era, that we can't have a national, the federal government coming in and telling the states how to run their elections. Well, what they were doing in the South was making sure through either terror and violence or through the law, making sure that African Americans had no access to the ballot. And we've moved away from that. And what I'm seeing, and what I think a lot of folks like me who worked in the voting rights space is seeing, is an attempt to maybe not go back to that, but to go back to an era in which we have actual discriminatory laws on the books that we know are discriminatory, that are introduced in order to be discriminatory. And really the basis for this, as we have to all remember, is the big lie that the last election was stolen, the last election was fraudulent, and that's just not true.
So your home state, Texas, has become one of the latest Republican-dominated states to advance these, their version of new voting limits. The governor says he's very eager to sign the law. It passed in the state's House. I'm wondering what the options are that Democrats have. Certainly this For the People Act is one option, but do Democrats have any other options to slow these efforts that we're seeing across the country?
We don't have a lot of options at the state level where you have full control of the legislature and the governor, and then they're saying this is a priority, even though 11 million Texans voted in the last election and they couldn't find any incidents of major fraud. But what we can do, aside from H.R. 1, is to restore the Voting Rights Act. We have a bill that's going to be coming forward in the House, H.R. 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to restore the aspects of that law that were carved out by the Supreme Court a few years ago, back in 2013. And this really led to this kind of nationwide bonanza, really, of voter restrictions. Ever since that part of the Voting Rights Act was struck down, we've seen just an explosion of these laws. So we can restore that. And of course, we have the courts where we can try and make our case in the courts. But as we've seen over the last 4 years, a lot of folks have been put on the bench, whether it's the district court level or the appellate court level, or even at the Supreme Court, who have been pretty hostile to voting. So I don't have a lot of faith that the courts are going to be our backstop here. I think we need to have legislation. I would like it to be bipartisan because in the past, voting rights has been bipartisan. But if we have to do it, we need to make sure we find some way to protect the right to vote in this country. It's really fundamental. There's no more fundamental aspect of our democracy than people being able to engage and make their voice heard.
I guess the issue for some, Congressman, is what you said earlier, which is that a lot of these restrictions are coming into place based off of the big lie, right? Where you have states, for example, like Florida, where the governor has bragged that the elections in that state were all done well. The Secretary of State in Florida has bragged that that Florida was a modicum of success when it came to elections, and then yet they're putting in these restrictive voting regulations and rules into place. And so if the premise is already flawed, how can you find any sort of daylight? You know what I mean? If it would be one thing to suggest that there was a problem and that needs to be fixed, but there were no problems other than the lies and the misinformation that the former president has spread with regards to the election. So you're already starting from a flawed premise.
Yeah, we are. And there's no basis for these laws. And when you have policies like this that are really just trying to fulfill either a campaign promise of some kind or to try and show their support for the former president, that is not a rational basis for making voting laws in this country or in any state. I mean, And these are going to impact Republican voters too, which is one of the things that I just don't understand the rationale behind this. In the last election, Republicans did very well down ballot. In the state of Texas, Donald Trump still won by over 5 points. The Senate candidate won by 10 points. They did very well down ballot. So in the same election where they're saying we did so well and we gained seats in the House and all of these things, and that in that same election there was so much fraud that occurred that they have to pass all these laws in all these states. And it just doesn't make any sense at all. And when you look at the laws, when you look at them, they are so explicitly intended to try and restrict the right to vote for certain people that it's almost laughable and embarrassing. Like in Georgia, where they, first of all, create laws that are going to create long lines, and then they say, but while you're in that line, no one can bring you any food or water, because if they did, if they give grandma a sip of water or a cracker or something like that, then that is a crime. I mean, what are we talking about here? This is the United States of America. We are the oldest and most important democracy in the world. Every other democracy around the world looks to us. And here we are having states passing laws, like in Texas, where they want to allow poll watchers, who are partisan poll watchers, by the way. They have to be appointed by the political party. Poll watchers to be in the polling place, filming voters and challenging them while they're trying to vote. That's just pure intimidation. That's what we're talking about here. These are not legitimate laws.
All right, Congressman Colin Allred, great to have you, sir. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.